Oh, I had my desktop audio on. Oops. All right, hey guys, we're back. This is the grand finals. Rhino has unfortunately also been slain by the pressures of casting, along with Neon. So we're with just me for the moment, for the remainder, or for at least for the foreseeable future. We're right into the grand finals, but before I dive just too deep into it, I wanted to toss you guys over with a little bit of a background for how Smooney got here. Smooney is our winners bracket finalist, so we haven't seen too much of him. We've only actually seen him on camera once. He started out in the first round beating Asapender, who was a Rakano player, then sent Kronos, who we saw down into the lowest bracket, also a Rakano player. Beat an Edwin 20ER on Xenon in the Xenon mirror, and then sent Impulsi down, defeating a Shimmer player, Iliac. I believe that one we also did not see on camera, which was another Shimmer player that he defeated, and finally on camera Hythar on Combre Aggro. So he's defeated plenty of aggressive decks and two Rakano decks at the very start. So we'll have to see how Jellamoose's deck lines up with his. Right now, this is not looking particularly good for Jellomoose, as he's on 5 power and has some pretty weak units in play. But he's got plenty of weapons in hand, which is unfortunately just going to run into some removal from Smooney. So it looks like Smooney is in more or less complete control of this game. A Finest Hour is going to stave off the Vera's favor, picking up a free unit, but Smooney's got more removal where that came from. If he chooses, he can kill both of the units by expending his Annihilate and his Suffocate here. Or he might decide to just wait it out and play another Dawnwalker. There's the Annihilate. Presumably the Suffocate will follow. And he gets in for 9. With no board and no units in hand, Jellomoose decides to concede, making this a very quick game, which was far before we even got in there. So, since there's no sideboards, we're going to jump right back into it, which means we are way behind schedule. For that, I apologize, but these guys have been playing all day. They are pumped. They are ready to go. And let's look at the opening hands. Jellomoose has an opening Oni Ronin, which is probably going to be answered by a Vera's Favor from Smooney's hand, but unfortunately Smooney is on the draw and will not be able to deploy it too quickly. He's now having a thought. He's got the banner, the monument, the diplomatic seal. Needs to decide the correct order to play his sigils. Jellomoose, I imagine, chooses to go with the outlaw to continue the Warcry train here, just trying to get in as many units as possible. And the quick draw should work well with the Finest Hour in his hand. Vera's Favor is going to be able to pick off the Oni Ronin, though, with only 2 damage and 1 Warcry trigger done, so not the end of the world. Jellomoose hasn't drawn any big weapons, but a single top deck could change that. He's stacking up the Warcry triggers pretty nicely and now has a 3/3 that can't be annihilated, and Smooney doesn't have any good plays on 3, but he's about to play a bunch of really big fatty units. So Jellomoose is going to need to outgrow those before they can come down if he wants to be able to take it down. Interestingly, Smooney decides to hold on to his Annihilate for the moment, waiting to see what else Jellomoose would play, and just picks it off at the end of turn, valuing the additional information that there was nothing else coming down over top of the 2 damage and potential Warcry trigger there. Chooses an Impending Doom to be the first up. With this particular hand, I imagine Jellomoose is going to be happy to attack into him. We'll have to see if he blocks. My suspicion is that he won't. He'll just take the 3, and that Jellomoose will continue to deploy his threats. That big 6/6 Champion of Glory has outgrown Smooney's blockers. So, with only sigils left in his hand, as this game is furiously trying to catch up to itself, Smune's going to have a tough time coming back against that 6-6. He did opt to go for the block and ran right into a Finest Hour, which opens up this attack, which now Smune is priced into blocking, and he's just playing right into Jelomoose's tricks. He's got a torch so that he can keep pushing through, pushes 6 damage, keeps the 3-3, deploys another 3-3, and is probably going to be able to take this second game and put it back to a 1-1 trick. Interesting that he decided not to play the Volk Reinforcer. I would have thought that you just push for damage. If he had it, he could potentially go for lethal here, but chooses just to go with the 6-6. Not sure if you guys are getting the slideshow that's on my end, but Smune only has the single defender against the 3 lethal units and is forced to concede. So now these players are going to jump into sideboarding, and I am going to restart Smune's vision to see if we can get a little bit cleaner version of what he is working with. So let's put his deck list back up on stream here. Sorry. Let me tell you, producing plus solo casting is not something that I would recommend to anybody. In the board, Smune has plagues to deal with the Oni Ronins and maybe take off a couple Aegis. You know, there's Jelomoose is playing the Silverwing Familiars, which they could potentially be good against the Crown Watch Paladins. So Plague's a reasonable card. Steward of the Past is always really good at gumming up the ground. It's a big unit. It's a large unit. It's got deadly, so it doesn't really care how many Warcry triggers something has. It's still going to be able to block it and trade, barring Quick Draw. Decay, also a reasonable choice. Jelomoose is playing a lot of weapons, so bringing that in order to counter them is reasonable. I don't think we'll be seeing Infinite Hourglass or Devour. We might see the Umbran Reaper come in as sort of a top end, but I expect that Smune will be focusing more on showing up his early game rather than trying to give himself some late game advantages. All right. The challenge is going out and the players are going back into game. So after that quick view of sideboarding, we're going to jump right back into it. Jelomoose versus Smune, game 3. Smune has a very Predator's Instinct heavy hand, which he decides to keep. No, he decides to redraw, sorry. Draws into an okay hand, wishes that Dawnwalker had an enabler, but if he does draw an enabler, this hand's going to be pretty good. And Jelomoose's hand is very slow. It's got 5 drops and removal, neither of which are what he really wants. The Rakano deck really wants to be able to get itself rolling as quickly as possible, and this hand doesn't really let Jelomoose does that. On the bright side, he is at least drawing sigils to allow him to build up to that plate, and if he can get there in time, he might be able to outrace Smune's Dawnwalker train. All right, we appear to have a bit of desync where Jelomoose's hand is a bit ahead of Smune, but Jelomoose goes with the Vanquish, just a tempo Vanquish, to slow his opponent down, and plays a Champion of Glory, which works out okay because Smune still has failed to draw a 5-power enabler for Dawnwalker and is forced to just play out another one. Jelomoose draws a 3rd Vanquish and plays his 2nd and is certainly going to get in there for 3, but he can't be too happy about how the game is progressing. The instant that Smune draws his 5-power unit, he's going to be totally turning this game in his favor by bringing back all the Dawnwalkers and drawing additional cards. Here, Jelomoose is willing to trade his 1-1 Familiar off because he has now drawn the 2nd Familiar, and Smune decides to block, valuing the immediate danger of clearing the Familiar over top of the potential for drawing cards later on. Probably feeling that just drawing back 2 Dawnwalkers is going to be enough value if he happens to draw something like this Sandstorm Titan, and he doesn't need to get the extra value of the cards. Rather, just deplete Jello-Moose's resources. Interesting that Jello decides not to vanquish the Titan or to silence any of the Dawnwalkers, just choosing to go with silencing the Sandstorm Titan, which is not a line that I agree with. It still leaves a 5/6 in play that you can't really deal with. If you were going to do that, it would probably be better um, to vanquish it and get it out of the way. It's possible that he's worried about Dark Return, I think would be the main thing, because if it brings back an even larger Sandstorm Titan, that's not going to be something that he has an answer for. And it does also get a unit on the board, but I don't think it uses his power particularly well, and it really doesn't help him out here. I'm not sure how much I agree with this attack. I would have expected Smune to make some killer Dawnwalkers, but it looks like he just wants to use his Titan as the killer removal target. Here we're going to see Drake make an appearance as Jello-Moose tries desperately to outrace the ground units. They're doing 13, so he's not quite dead, but it's going to be difficult for him to survive long in this game without a Silverwing Familiar running. If Smune wants to, he can annihilate one of those targets, but he seems to have been saving it in case Jello-Moose ever plays a weapon on something. So I would not be surprised to see him hold on to it here as well. No, okay, decides to go for the Soulfire Drake, just keeping himself as healthy as possible. He's handily winning the race at the moment, so doesn't really need to worry too much, and would rather just keep himself alive. Here, Jello can deploy the plate, which does give him one blocker, but again, one blocker against 3 isn't going to cut it, and just A+ space is going to take the game. Jello-Moose is going to go down 2-1 to Smune, and his tournament is on the line. Jello-Moose will need to win 2 games from here to avoid being eliminated and reset the bracket, whereas Smune can win either of the next 2 games and take the tournament as your grand finals champion. Whew. I have to say, and I'm going to check this, Smune's deck is 6, 8, plus 12? No, 14 plus 12, 26 power. All right, so he's only playing 26 power, but it seems like he's been drawing a lot of it in these games, and neither player gives me time to catch my breath and speculate on what changes they may have made, as they just jump right back into it. All right. All of you Rakano fans out there, you better be cheering for Jello-Moose because his tournament is on the line. Smune mulligans into an absolutely abysmal hand full of junk, essentially. He does have a Suffocate for an early play, but beyond that, he's got these Beast Scholars Amulets that desperately need a unit in order to use, and a whole bunch of power. He can draw out of this, but this is not a good starting point. Jello decides to go for the Rakano Outlaw, which is going to play into Smune's Suffocate pretty well. But Smune continues to draw cards that aren't very good right now, like Dark Return, which don't help, which, he can't cast any of these cards. His hand is 5 uncastables right now. So Jello-Moose is getting the time in order to deploy his units. A third Beast Caller's Amulet is certainly not what Smune wants. And the gods of aReNGee, not me personally, but somebody has answered Smune or Jello-Moose's prayers and has dealt Smune an absolute. Well, it's not a good hand. I'm not sure how much I feel about not just slamming the hammer, because your opponent doesn't have any Scorpion Wasp that you need to play around, and I think getting the additional Warcry is better than developing the weapon. I don't think that Sword of Ikari is that good in this matchup to begin with. Here, it looks like he's willing to trade 2-for-1 with his... No, there was no block. Okay. Sorry, I thought there was a block there. So he's deploying a Silverwing Familiar, and he's going to slam a hammer on it, and he's going to go to town. But Smune can just attack in with a Beast Caller's Amulet and make himself a nice 5/5 and double his board presence. And that's pretty good. Also takes out the sword. So I imagine that's what he's going to do. He can leave up Annihilate while doing so. And he's starting to turn right around back into this game. He can just keep playing Beast Caller's Amulet and keep getting beasts. And I don't know that Jelamoose has done enough initial damage in order to prevent that. Well, if he had now he can't attack with his 2/2 Crown Watch, whereas if he had played the Hammermite instead of the Sword of Ikaria, he could have. Decides to put it on the Sword of Ikaria and bait in with the trade on the 5/5, but uses the finest hour to make sure that he trades. But he's not getting the face damage through, and these Beast Calls Amulets are going to start producing a whole lot of beasts. Actually, 2 beasts this turn. As Mune crashes in for 8 and makes a 10/10, or a 10/10 worth of stats. Oh, but maybe this top deck by Jelamoose can turn it back in his favor. Jelamoose draws in an absolutely enormous, I think it's a 9/9 plate? Yeah, a 9/9 plate that he can slam on his Silverwing Familiar and get in for 10, boosting himself up to 24 and giving himself a huge blocker. Yeah, Smune can't... Nothing that he can Dark Return. He doesn't have the 2 removal spells. Jelamoose is going to take it. He stays alive for another game. Like all the matches that we've had here, we bring only the best, and we are going down to the wire. Jelmoose's tournament is on the line, but Smune, he's brought Smune down to the final game of the first set. Players are tied at 2-2. We see some of the sideboarding here, which I'll just leave up for the moment. Smune has completely split his premiums and his regular cards, and I am rendered speechless. Jelamoose, as is tradition, will be sorting through his cards just to make sure that his sideboard is absolutely in place. So we'll take a quick look at that again. Ruins aren't particularly good. Beast Caller's Amulet isn't something you want to be ruining. Protect is probably making an appearance. The Vanquish has probably come in. Righteous Fury is a thought, but again, it doesn't make your units larger, so it's probably unlikely in this kind of matchup. And the Soulfire Drakes... The Soulfire Drake might have come in if he had something to cut, but I don't think that they're something you specifically choose. So it looks like the players are hopping back into the game. This is the final game of the first set of Grand Finals. If Smune wins this, Smune is your 2016 Eye of Winter Classic champion. If Jelamoose wins this, the bracket is reset, and these players will play another best of 5 in order to determine the winner. The opening hands are set, and Jelamoose does not have a turn 1 play or a strong turn 2 play. That Champion of Glory is going to get taken out by the Varus favor potentially. Depending on how Smune wants to play this. As he is on the play, he can just get the jump and start playing Dawnwalkers and Stewards of the Past and what have you, but Jelamoose is not currently on the front foot, and Smune has quite a nice hand for curving out. Jelamoose retaliates with a Silverwing Familiar, which should be able to survive long enough for him to slap a Hammermite on it and start churning, but he's going to have a tough time attacking through the Sandstorm Titan that's anticipated to come down. Fortunately, he does have a Vanquish in hand, but that doesn't quite get the Warcry train started. It's more of a... more stems the bleeding than anything. He also doesn't have the double Justice available for Valkyrie Enforcer, which isn't a problem this turn, but could be a problem in the future. Smune just deploys 2 threats, gets his first Dawnwalker out there. Dew-Forged Blade is going to be good if Jelmoose can ever cast it, but stuck on 3 power, he's not really close. And just a Rakano Outlaw, it's not looking good for Jelmoose here. I have to say. Stuck on power, not what he needs in hand. We see an attack here. We might see an aggressive defense. Well, I say aggressive, but a block plus Finest Hour out of Jelmoose, but it looks like no. He decides not to and is going to save the power in order to defend his unit from Suffocate. Choosing the Protect as the Finest Hour has more immediate applications, though both can be used. Still can't find that that 4th power. And I highly doubt that Smune is blocking here. He's got the aggressive strat. He's got the better board. He can only play into Jelmoose's tricks by blocking, so just lets it through. And Jelmoose can play another Silverwing, but without the weapons, these birds aren't nearly as threatening. And he'll get in there for 10 and drop Jelmoose down to 11. So I'm not sure what Jelmoose can draw here, honestly, in order to boost himself up. I don't think that there's any block that he can make that makes a ton of sense. Maybe on the Dawnwalker if you're feeling incredibly ambitious that your opponent has nothing. But even then, I don't think that does it for you. I think your best out involves drawing power to get up to plate, but no power and no justice mean that the only card that he can play in his hand is Finest Hour. It looks like all the power problems that had been plaguing Hythar all through his matches with Jelmoose have finally transitioned themselves over to plague Jelmoose himself. From the looks of things, Smune will be your 2016 Eye of Winter Classic Grand Finals champion. We just need to see A plus space. Well, potentially. I may be overselling it. There's still a lot of stuff that could happen. Jelmoose could have multiple cards in hand. Smune needs to figure out that what he's playing around, because obviously no one wants to lose this game. It's not the end of the world for Smune, as he can just play another best of 5, but I think everybody would far rather just win this game here and secure his place immediately. Decides to not go with the Umbran Reaper and just go with the other ones. So that would drop Jelmoose down to 4 if unblocked. And he decides to go with the Finest Hour on the Argenport Instigator, which Smune is thinking about devouring, but probably wants to actually use his Devour on the Umbran Reaper instead in response to potentially a Silence in order to get the damage through. So interesting that the Instigator didn't trigger there. So Jelmoose is now at 8, and he's finally drawn a Vanquish. So he can take care of that 5/5. Unfortunately, with no other follow-up play, it looks like it's probably going to be too little too late, as Dawnwalker can overwhelm through, and the Entomb trigger from the Umbran Reaper is going to be able to do it. Jelmoose is he gets stuck with too many expensive weapons in hand and is not able to play them, and is taken down in 5 games, 3-2. Coming through the winner's bracket all the way to the grand finals, Smune on Xenon Killers is your 2016 Eye of Winter Classic Grand Finals champion without dropping a single match. Congratulations!